Thank you for watching today. I'm Michael Everts, and this is Fit to Be Read. I'm not going to waste any time. My top 5 new release reads of 2021. Just to give a little bit of context, I've read about 45 books this year. Only about 8 of them were actual new releases for 2021. So these are the top 5 of those 8 releases. My number 5 is going to be a tie. I had 2 independent author reads this year, and they both come in at my number 5 slot. The first one I'm going to mention to you is Refraction by Wick Welker. This was a really great read. This is 3 different timelines. One of them is in 1986. One of them is about 80 years in the future, and another one is 80 years further in the future. In the first timeline, there's a professor, Timothy Strauss. He's trying to invent a warp speed type of drive. And then in the future timelines, we get to see the results of that. There are some mysterious voices in this. There is a timeline where there is a robot president of Mars. It's a very exciting read, and we get a couple of different points of view, and there's some good surprises and some twists and turns. And I recommend this to folks who want to give a shot to some independent authors and they're not sure if they want to take the risk of something that hasn't been widely reviewed and you don't know what to expect. This was a really good and enjoyable read. There was some info dump in here, but if you can get through that after the first 100 pages, I really recommend sticking with this because it is a fun read and it's a really quick page turner. Also coming in at number 5 is The Nemesis Effect by Michael Schotter. This was a really good read. This is another independent author, an independent title. You can see this is a really short novella. It was a really fun and interesting read. The premise here is that there is this anomaly in space in our solar system and it's going to swallow up or destroy the Earth. The Earth is done for. There's a small group of elites that have been gathered together. These are the best and the brightest, and they're going to make a kind of last-ditch effort to try to stop this anomaly and stop what's going on. Now, while that's the main premise and the main plot, and there's some suspense and some mystery and some surprise that's going on around that, what was most interesting about this book is the weird kind of near-future society that's taking place on the Earth. It's not far future, it's definitely near future. There's some new technology. There's some really interesting things with nanites. That serves the most visual aspects of the story. There are some descriptions of how the nanites work, and you can really picture it in your mind, and I really enjoy that here. But what was most intriguing for me was that the world is just a little bit off. It wasn't over the top, it wasn't overboard, but you get the sense that you're seeing a familiar world, and it is near future, but the Earth maybe had experienced some sort of dramatic catastrophe not too long ago in its history, and it's changed society just a little bit. And the way in which it's been changed is people are just like really nice and very courteous, but in enough of a way that we're wondering, what's going on with these like all too nice people? And what's comfortable about it is we really do want to find that out, but we're not sure if we're going to or not. So you sort of get to this place where you accept that I might not find this out, but I'm still going to enjoy this ride because I like that I'm feeling a little bit unsettled and unbalanced. Maybe you find out, maybe you don't. It's a very good read. It's a short investment too. So I'm not sure if I want to recommend it to people only because I enjoyed it because it connected with me. I don't know if that's going to connect with everybody, but again, because it's a short read, I would recommend it because even if it's an investment, it's a short investment. It's not a really big risk. Give this one a shot. At number 4, I went with another novella, and this was one I really liked, and this one's not hard to recommend at all. I've seen a few reviews on this. It's Nnedi Okorafor's Remote Control, and I haven't heard anybody say anything negative about this one. I've heard some people who have loved it, and I've heard some people who have really liked it. There's nothing to not like about this. It's an interesting story about a young girl. Her name is Sankofa. I believe her name started out as Fatima, and then her name changes to Sankofa. She sort of comes into contact with something that falls from space. It's not sure if it's magic or tech or what, but imbues her with a power that creates death around her in a sort of way. And I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to spoil it. What's great about this is the story is good enough and it's fine, and her interactions with people are fine. People are very scared of her, respectful towards her. They want to help her, but they also fear her because of this power that she has. And what's really great though is the writing. It's really beautiful writing, really beautiful prose. Okorafor really has a way with language. There's one particular passage here that I'm not going to read right now, but I did a review of this on the channel, And I think I actually read the passage there, and it's talking about a bullet coming out of a gun and the smoke that comes out. The way she describes that is just really, really beautiful. And I think if you've heard of Okorafor and you've kind of been feeling like, oh, I'd like to try that author out, this is an easy one to do it with because it's very satisfying. It's not mind-blowing. Some of her other stuff is really phenomenal and very fantastical. Lagoon was a really great read for me this year. Who Fears Death is going to be another reread for me coming up on my TBR. And the Binti series is really great too. That would be another one to start with if you're looking at this author. But this one was a really good, comfortable one. But it's a really great way to introduce you to her reading because some of her really best work is in this book in terms of her descriptive language. This next novel coming in at number 3 is one that I have recommended a lot. And it's such a polished work that I forget to mention sometimes that it is a debut novel. And it is a debut novel for Micaiah Johnson. This is The Space Between Worlds. We're following this main character, Kara, and she travels through the multiverse. So it's multiple universes, and there's different versions of the Earth. She can travel to these different dimensions because of the work that she does. The rule, though, is that you can't travel to a different version of Earth where your doppelganger exists. So she can only go to places where her doppelganger does not exist. Well, there are a lot of places where her doppelganger doesn't exist because she's been killed off. So that's one of the mysteries we're trying to find out here. So if you're into like multiple universe stuff, this is a really good read. Micaiah Johnson's writing is very solid. There's some LGBTQ characters in here as well, which I really enjoy, or I should say LGBTQ+. Like I said, I've recommended this to a bunch of people this year, and everybody who I've recommended it to that has read it has come back to me and said that they really enjoyed it and it was just what they were looking for. So if you want to try something out by a new author, this is a really good place to start. Number 2 on my list has gotten a lot of praise this year. This is probably going to be the most recognizable title on my list. Andy Weir's 2021 release, The Hail Mary Project. I believe this just won the Goodreads Award. This was a fun read. This centers on a high school or junior high school science teacher who gets recruited to try to help save the world. There's some interesting thing going on with the life form that's transmitting from the sun to Venus, and it's affecting the Earth, and they're not exactly sure what's going on, but this guy gets recruited, gets sent into space, so there's some first contact stuff potentially going on here. There's some really interesting relationships that take place in this, and the real strength of this is a connection between the two main characters in the story. To say more than that would be to spoil it, but the connection between two of the main characters in this is the real strength and the heart of this story. So we read this wondering if Ryland Grace, our main character, is going to be able to save the Earth from impending destruction. Finally, at number 1 for me this year, just barely edging out Project Hail Mary, is Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Adrian Tchaikovsky, you may know, is also the author of Children of Time, which was a really excellent read, and Children of Ruin, the sequel to that. Shards of Earth is the first book of Tchaikovsky's new series, the Final Architect series. This is a really great read. What I loved about this was the combination of really interesting characters and unique races, the idea of a giant, unknown, mysterious villain, and then just traveling to different worlds. There's definitely Expanse vibes here. There's Star Wars vibes here in that there are interesting characters, there's interesting races, and we're traveling from world to world. There's a bit of space opera in here that's sort of mixed with military sci-fi. There's some space battle, but most of the battle is kind of hand-to-hand in close contact sort of stuff, and that's really interesting. So we have two main character point of views that we're following. We have Myrmidon, Executor Sullus, who's also known as the angel of punching you in the face, sort of. And then we have Idris Telemir, who is an intermediary. So this is centering on these giant, what are being called architects. They are these moon-like entity aggressors that come and they destroy inhabited worlds. And we're not exactly sure at first, but towards the end of this first book of the series, we sort of get a little bit of an idea of what's going on. And they're called the architects because they destroy these worlds and they basically like rip them apart or turn them inside out. And in doing so, they look like sculptures. And in some cases, they look like a flower they're described as. And so maybe there's even beauty in this. except for the fact that the cost here is billions of lives. So this is on a really grand scale. We have some very interesting characters. Telomere is an intermediary, meaning he has sort of these mental abilities, and he can actually connect in some ways with this architect because, main weaponry in an individual fighting against a moon-sized being, it's sort of a lost cause. So perhaps the only hope is for somebody like Telomere or other intermediaries to infiltrate the mind or the essence of these architects. There could potentially be some success there. And you've got to read the book to find out. But what's great about this book is even there's a bit of a struggle in the beginning because you're getting used to a lot of characters, some who we're not sure if we're going to follow them through the rest of the book or not, others who we do follow throughout the rest of the book, different races and worlds that we have to get used to. There's a lot of that, and there's not a lot of info dump going on, which is great. So you're not getting bogged down by info dump, but that also means that you have to really stick with it and trust that the author is going to get you where he wants to take you. And he does, because the payoff in the second half of the book is a book that is absolutely unputdownable. You're just going to turn page after page after page because you want to see what's going on. And the action is so good. It's really good space opera. It's really good military sci-fi. There are space battles, but there's also close quarters, one-on-one or group battles inside of like a spaceship. We go to see different interesting worlds and we meet interesting characters. So I really recommend this book for somebody who likes this expanse perhaps, or that kind of Star Wars feel of like an interesting group of characters in space. This is good for that. But it's just nonstop action. So if you feel like a read where, you do a little bit of work with character build up and understanding the races and the characters, but then you like that payoff of, okay, I just want some nonstop action, this is a good one for that. And if you like the idea of getting into a series, this is one where I read where I'm really eager to get right to the next one in the series right away. And that's not always the case. I like series, but sometimes what I like to do is have a big chunk in between where I'm reading maybe 4 or 5 different books before I get to the next one in the series. I'm doing that with my reread of the Expanse series. This one, I feel like as soon as the next book comes out, I'm going to dive right on it because I'm so excited and interested to see what comes next. So those were my top 5. Like I said, I think I read about 8 new releases this year. The ones that come to my mind that I also read that didn't make the list were Mike Chen's We Could Be Heroes, which was a good read. It wasn't necessary. I didn't know what I was getting into when I read it, and it wasn't what I was looking for. So no knock on the writing. It was a decent book. It just wasn't the type of read that I was looking for at that time. So that didn't land on my list. Another one was Kazuo Ishiguro's Clara and the Sun. I did a review of this one on my channel. This wasn't, even if I did the reads of like top reads of the year, this was probably going to be on the bottom of my list. And I've said this before about this on this channel. The book's well written. It's just not a great read. It's not a real interesting story. It doesn't bring anything new to the table. I was really disappointed about this. This was one of the first book hauls I actually did this year on the channel. And I was so excited when this was coming out to pick it up. I do really like Never Let Me Go. I thought was a really great read. Remains of the Day was a very good read by Ishiguro. But in the sci-fi genre, this was a real big, to me, swing and a miss. I think also a lot of the themes in this book are themes that were done really well by other authors like Philip K. Dick, Isaac Asimov, Ian M. Banks, Alistair Reynolds. And this just doesn't come anywhere close to even meeting that bar. So I was really disappointed with this one, and therefore it's not going to be on my top 5. To run through these one more time, number 5 was Refraction by Wick Welker and The Nemesis Effect by Michael Schotter. Number 4 was Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor. Number 3, The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. Number 2 was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. And the number 1 book of 2021 among new releases that I read was Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Thank you for watching today. Let me know in the comment section what your favorite read of 2021 was and what you thought about the books that I mentioned. If you've read those books, even if it's Clara and the Sun, which was not on my top 5. I'm Michael Everts. This is Fit to Be Read. Please like, please subscribe. Please click the notification bell and YouTube will let you know every Thursday at 1 o'clock when I release new content. Thank you.